Sanders.
Thank you. Steve, thank you very much for that very generous introduction. I don't know what to say after your speech. You've said it all. But let me say a few words, or more than a few words, and then we'll open it up to your thoughts and your questions. I began this campaign about 8 months ago, and I think it's fair to say that most people outside of New England didn't know who I was. We started off at about 3% in the polls, but a lot has happened in the last 8 months, and I think the reason that our campaign has kind of caught on in Nevada and around the country is, as Steve mentioned, we are discussing the real issues facing the American people. What are those issues? Well, the issues are that you're living in a rigged economy, and that is that the middle class for the last 40 years has been disappearing. So despite a huge increase in productivity and technology, most of you are working longer hours for lower wages. In my state, and I'm sure in Nevada, it is not uncommon to see people working 2 or 3 jobs to cobble together some income and some health care. You got single moms who are worried about how they're gonna survive. I met a woman just the other day in Reno, yesterday. Makes $10.45 an hour, has a kid who's 5 years of age, owes student debt. How does she survive? Talk to 50, 55-year-old workers who are worried that they're gonna lose their jobs and somebody's gonna be hired half their age and half their wage. Talk to high school kids, graduates can't find any work at all. Meanwhile, in our country, we have more income and wealth inequality than any other country on earth. I know the media doesn't like talking about it, but today the top 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. Got that? 20 of the wealthiest people own more wealth than half of the American people. 150 million. 20 people, 150 million people. And while people are working so hard and so long hours, 58% of all new income today is going to the top 1%. Is that the economy that we deserve? I think not. So what we are going to do, I know this is a radical idea, is create an economy that works for all of the people and not just Sheldon Adelson and a handful of billionaires. Steve mentioned young people. And we don't talk enough about young people, and we don't talk enough about children in this country. I trust that nobody in this country feels good that in this wealthy nation, the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. 20% of our kids living in poverty, 36% of African American children living in poverty. Half the kids in public schools in America today are on free or reduced lunch programs. And here's an issue that almost nobody talks about, and I want to lay it out on the table because I think it is enormously important. I asked some economists a few months ago to do a study for me on youth unemployment in America, youth unemployment. And this is what they said. They said for high school graduates, not dropouts, high school graduates between the ages of 17 and 20, if the kids were whites, the rate was 33% unemployed or underemployed. Latino, 36%. African American, 51% unemployed or underemployed. Now here are young people who graduated high school, didn't drop out. They want to get their feet on the ground, they want to be independent, they want to get out of their homes, they want to earn some money, start their adult lives, and millions of them just cannot find work at all. And if anybody here thinks there is not a direct correlation between that fact and the fact that we have more people in jail than any other country on earth, you would be mistaken. There is a direct correlation. You got 5.5 million kids in my city, in your city, hanging out on street corners. And when kids hang out on street corners, they get into trouble. Okay? And they sometimes end up in jail. So here's a radical idea. And the idea is that we invest in education and jobs for our young people, not more jails, not more incarceration. Other major theme, and Steve touched on this as well. We have to, I see we have a veteran here. We thank you very much for your service, and maybe other veterans. I'm the former chairman of the Senate Veterans Committee, and in that capacity, I have had the privilege to meet and work with veterans from World War II on up, career to Iraq and Afghanistan, Vietnam. People put their lives on the line to defend our way of life, which is called a democracy. You know what a democracy is about? It's a very radical idea. It really is. Only a couple of 100 years old. It says that you have the right to determine the future of America, not just billionaires. You have a vote, and you have a vote, and I have a vote, and the people majority wins. What democracy is not about are billionaires contributing unlimited sums of money to the candidates of their choice so that the billionaires end up controlling our government. That's not called democracy. Steve called it plutocracy. I call it oligarchy. Doesn't matter what you call it. It is a government of the few, not of the people. And that disturbs me very, very much. And together we have got to change that. We have got to overturn Citizens United. We have got to do our best to revitalize American democracy. What scares me very much is that so many of our people are giving up on the political process. They don't vote, they don't pay attention. Last election we had a year ago, midterm election, 63% of the American people didn't vote, 80% of young people didn't vote. Does that sound like a democracy to you? It's not. So we've got to work on that as well. Is incarcerated compared to 1 in every 106 white men. A report by the Department of Justice found that blacks were 3 times more likely to be searched during a traffic stop compared to white motorists. I think some of us saw the video of Sandra Bland, who ended up dead because she failed to make a left turn or something. African Americans are twice as likely to be arrested and almost 4 times as likely to experience the use of force during encounters with the police. African American women are 3 times more likely than white women to be incarcerated. Once convicted, black offenders receive longer sentences than white offenders. Listen to this one. 13% of African American men have lost the right to vote due to felony convictions. Those are just some of the facts that are out there that tell me we need to take a very hard course of action to deal with institutional racism and to deal with a broken criminal justice system. A system which is look, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that if kids do not have a good education, if they're not proficient in English or in the sciences, if they're not prepared to go out into the real world with real skills, the likelihood of those kids doing well is very, very low. And we should be ashamed of ourselves. We are seeing rates of failure, academic failure, in minority communities that are off the charts and that are unacceptable. So I think we have to, and I'm not going to tell you I have a magical formula, but I do think that we have to change our national priorities. And we have to say that as a nation, this is a great nation, we've got a lot of smart people. We have got to raise the level of education in terms of our priorities and what we respect. You know, Sunday afternoon in New England, everybody's watching Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. And Tom Brady's a great quarterback and a great athlete, and we love great athletes. But you know what? We better start loving great teachers as well. unbelievable. I mean, it really is. And again, I don't want to press the point. You know it all better than I do. Good news is we're seeing more kids graduate high school. Bad news is the standards are going down, and some of these kids who are graduating are unprepared to deal with the real world. Why? Right? And when you talk about education, let me tell you something else. It's not just the reason I am fighting for free tuition at public colleges and universities is I want every kid in Nevada and every kid in Vermont who are in the 6th grade, whose family doesn't have a lot of money like my family, okay, to know that if they study hard, they will be able to get a college education. So it's an incentive out there. But the other thing where this country is incredibly far behind is every psychologist in the world who studies the issue understands that the most important years of a human being's emotional and intellectual development are 0 to 4. Now you tell me, do we have the kind of child care or pre-K system that children and parents need for these little kids? And the answer is obviously we don't. Child care is unaffordable in many cases. People who work in the child care business are making $10 an hour. They don't have the training. What I believe is we have got to say that we want the best and the brightest to work with the little kids. Pay them a living salary. Make it a career that they're proud of. Make sure that when our kids leave childcare and go to the public schools or wherever, they are well prepared intellectually and emotionally. I don't think that's asking too much.
Mr. Sanders, I appreciate the quotes, the stats that you gave about incarceration in the African American community. There are some to say that incarceration is the new Jim Crow. Being incarcerated and having that over your head, you can be denied housing, education, and employment.
Yes.
And with all due respect, we see the current commander-in-chief try to make some changes and the opposition that is there. So realistically, what can we do to change that? Prison is a big business. It's money. And when you try to affect people's money, they come after you. So my question is twofold. How realistic is it that someone like you can make change, number one, and then number two, what can the people do besides voting for the right person?
Okay. You've asked a very profound question that goes beyond prisons. It goes to the nature of society and where we are today in America. In terms of prisons, let me just say, I don't know if this is part of what you meant in your questions, but I do not believe that prisons in America should be privately owned by corporations. Nor do I believe that detention centers that are holding undocumented people should have quotas and be owned by private corporations as well. So I have introduced legislation to get private corporations out of the building and running of prisons. You should not make profits out of incarcerating fellow Americans. Okay, that's number one. Number two, your broader question, which goes, in a sense, beyond criminal justice issues. And what you're really asking is, how do we make change in America, and can one person do it? And the answer is, no, one person cannot do it. And if you hear what I have been talking about throughout this entire campaign, I'm saying, yes, Nevada, I want your support to become president. But what I always say is I cannot do it alone. We need a political revolution in this country. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means that virtually every idea that I have laid out to you today has the support of the majority of the people in this country. That's true. These are not radical ideas. But these ideas are not listened to by Congress because the big money interests who fund their campaigns and the corporations who have enormous influence over our economy and legislative life, they don't like these ideas. How do you beat them? The only way, as everybody in this room knows or should know, the only way that change has ever taken place in this country is from the bottom on up. That's the only way. Lyndon Johnson 50 years ago signed the Voting Rights Act. Not because he was a wonderful guy, but because for decades, blacks and their white allies said, We are not going to tolerate segregation and racism. All right? Today, we are talking about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I support that. New York Times just came out today in support of it. You know why that happened? Because people in the fast food industry, people at McDonald's and in Burger King said we can't make it on $7.25, $8 an hour. They went out on strike, and suddenly Seattle and Los Angeles and San Francisco are beginning to say we need to raise the minimum wage from the bottom on up. Women's rights. 100 years ago, women were struggling, going to jail on hunger strikes, demanding the right to vote, demanding the right not to be second-class citizens. That's how change comes about. So what I'm saying to you in answer to your very good question, I cannot do it alone. There will not be the kind of change that we need unless millions of people begin to demand that we have a government that represents all of us and not just the few people on top. Do you know what the power of Wall Street is in this country? And Nevada, God knows what Wall Street did to this state, probably as much as any state in this country. They spent $5 billion over a 10-year period to get deregulated in campaign contributions and in lobbying. $5 billion. Do you know why you're paying the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs? Because the pharmaceutical industry spends unbelievable amounts of money on lobbying and campaign contributions. The only way we can make real change in this country, and that is what this campaign is about. It's not just electing me. I need you. I need you not now, I need you now, but I need you the day after the election. We have got to be involved in a political process in the way that we are not right now. Let me conclude that question. Barack Obama is a good friend of mine. I think he is one of the smartest guys ever to be in the White House. I think given the opposition that he has faced day after day, the obstructionism, he has done a very good job. And I want everybody to remember, and my Republican friends seem not to, but I want everybody here to remember where we were 7 years ago. 800,000 jobs a month being lost. 800,000. $1.4 trillion deficit, largest in history. World's financial system on the verge of collapse. Are we where we want to be today? No. Have we come some distance? Yes, we have. But what was Obama's mistake, in my view? And I've had the privilege to discuss this issue with him. In 2008, Barack Obama ran one of the best campaigns in the history of the United States. Brilliant campaign. Energized young people, poor people, black, white, Hispanic, everybody together. Did a fantastic job. What was his mistake after the election?
Bailing him out.
Pardon me?
Bailout.
Well,
He had both houses, he had power then.
all right,
The
yeah.
infrastructure of the campaign
Go ahead.
disappeared.
That's right. Stand up and say it loud.
The infrastructure of the campaign disappeared, and all of those people who rallied together sat back and said, do the work, bruh. And it didn't happen.
That's right. In other words, because President Obama happens to be a very decent guy and a generous guy, he thought that he could sit down with the Republicans and say, look, I can't get it all, you can't get it all, let's negotiate. That was never their intention, not at all. So instead of continuing that campaign and bringing the millions of people who had supported him, rallying them, telling the Republicans they're going to have to listen to the needs of the people, that did not happen. That is a mistake I will not make. In general, in terms of corporate America, what you're seeing is not only on Wall Street, but in area after area, fewer and fewer large corporations controlling the sectors that they're in, whether it's agriculture or any other area. In terms of GMOs, you're looking at a United States Senator who a couple of years ago in the agricultural bill did put an amendment up which said that states do have the right to label food products if they have GMOs in them. We lost, but I'm happy to tell you that my state of Vermont is the first state in the country to in fact do that. Okay, we got a woman right, oh, you got somebody right here? Okay.
Thank you for coming, Senator Sanders. My name is Joanne Cato, and thank you for coming to North Las Vegas. One of my hot button topics is on immigration. I'm a naturalized citizen, I'm from Jamaica, and I was one of the lucky ones through my family was able to be a citizen of this beautiful country that has been really wonderful for my family. There are millions and millions of people that look like me, that are not Latinos, that are from Haiti, that are from Jamaica, that are from Africa, that when they try to benefit from some of these programs, the DREAM Act, and all these other things that are in place for the Latino families that are here, that are benefiting, they are not getting the same treatment. I have families, I have friends that are lawyers, doctors, and whatever, undocumented, but they're still here and they're contributing to the economy of this great nation. What plans do you have that you think would be on your radar that you and your team, when elected, is going to help families that look like me?
We need, let me just, thank you for asking that question. And let me start off by saying that in this country, people can disagree about immigration reform or anything else. But what I find unacceptable and what I am seeing more and more is bigotry and racism, and that is unacceptable. People like Trump have opened the door, and other people have followed, and we gotta slam that door shut, okay? That's number one. 11 million undocumented people in this country, perhaps including some of your family members. Okay. So regardless of whether they came from Jamaica or Mexico, wherever they came from. I should tell you, my father came to this country at the age of 17 from Poland, so I know a little bit about immigration. We need to take people out of the shadows right now because people are very, very afraid that they could be picked up and deported, families broken up. We need to pass comprehensive immigration reform, and we need a path towards citizenship for all undocumented people. If, and I hope we can change this, if the Congress does not move forward in comprehensive immigration reform, my pledge to you is I will use the executive orders of the President of the United States to do everything that I can to address that situation in a humane way. Okay, maybe one last question. We got a mic. Oh, I'm sorry, all right. Then two questions, 1, 2.
Okay, Senator, one of the issues, and I appreciate you coming here, African Americans from an unemployment historically through the 60s has been double that of the national average. So I'm not talking about Hispanics, I'm not talking about other minorities. When you look at the black experience, we need access to capital, black folks, not minorities, to be able to create a strong sub-economy. So my question to you, looking at, if you connect the dots to everything, it goes back to economics. What can and will you do to focus and make some of these programs like, well, some of these programs that are designed to assist them, SBA, just some of those that are designed, but you're not seeing them coming to the black community.
Right. Your point is higher than general unemployment. And by the way, since the recession, the black community has recovered less than other parts of our economy. So what do? If we are serious about addressing unemployment, that's not a different question that the gentleman asked earlier. We have got to make sure that we do get capital to small and medium-sized businesses to help them grow, to help them hire people who look like they are. It makes common sense. To do that, among other things. So the answer is yes, you're right, and that is exactly what I will do. But second of all, in a broader sense, you know what we also have to do, and that is break up the large financial institutions on Wall Street who control unbelievable amounts of capital and are not using that capital to make affordable loans into small and medium-sized businesses in general. So, number one, yes, when black unemployment is off the charts, we've got to focus on how we reduce that, and making sure that small and medium-sized African-American businesses get the capital they need and affordable cost is right.
We're trying to put legislation in for postal banking nationwide.
All right, well, that's kind of another issue which I agree with, but that's a kind of a different issue. But thank you for the question, and you're absolutely right. All right, last question is that young lady back there. Oh, there she is, okay.
Senator, thank you so much for coming here. This is wonderful. Yeah. So you have an extremely expensive program that you're planning on implementing for students who want to attend public college, but for students like me who chose private college and now have mountains of student loans, what are you planning to help us not be burdened our entire lives by?
Well, two things. Number one, people have the right to go to private colleges, and we will provide help through increased Pell Grants and other programs. And number two, doesn't matter whether you're in a private or a public colleges, when you leave school and you are deeply in debt, our program helps in the following way. This is how it helps. Right now, you got millions of people who have student debt who are paying 6, 8, 10% interest rates on their debt. Now, the crazy thing is you can refinance your home now at what? 2, 3, 4%, yes? So why are you paying 6, 8, 10%? We will give you and all people the opportunity to refinance and get the lowest interest rates you can, which can cut your student debt very, very significantly, okay? Okay, let me conclude. We have a meeting that we've got to get going to. This is a great turnout, and thank you for your questions. And I did hear what all of you have to say. And those are issues that we will pay attention to. I think that given the crises facing our country and working people, now is the time to wage a political revolution to transform our society. And I look forward to working with you to make that happen. Thank you all very much.
What's your name?
Excuse me, are you working, Mr. Sanders?
We're going to take off right after this.
Yep, I just want to give him my card. Okay. I'm trying to do a documentary about bullying. I'm doing a documentary about bullying.
I just have to keep my eye on him, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know about you. We're doing your selfie. Yeah. You want to do one too?
You're working with Sanders as well?
We're headed right out the store, sir.
Okay, no problem, no problem.
So we're going to go right out there.
They put on a beanie on it, man.
Okay.
Take a picture. Come on. Hey, man. Come on. Did it work? Come on now.
We've got a...
Go ahead.
I'm giving my card. I'm working on workplace bullying.
What?
Workplace bullying issues. I'm trying to solve I'm creating a documentary about workplace bullying, and I need your support. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders.
Thank you.